Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
We interrupt this program to give you a bulletin just received from one of our naval units at sea.
Hello, what have we here?
My God, it's full of stars.
Xenopod from the year 5000.
Welcome to Xenopod from the year 5000. I am your host, Sean DeRager, and it's good to be back, finally. First episode of the year. And joining me today, very excited. We've been talking about this, I feel like, forever since I first started this show. But Aaron Neuwirth joins me. Aaron, what's up?
Hey, I'm glad to be here. I time traveled 3,000 years to get to this point, so
Exactly.
it was worth the trip.
Exactly. Aaron, of course, you have you write for a website called We Live Entertainment, and of course, you do plenty of other things. So I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce yourself, and then and we'll introduce the movies we're going to be talking about.
Well, yeah, as you said, I write for We Live Entertainment, among other sites. I put up a lot of movie reviews over there, as well as some TV coverage. I'm currently writing about The Walking Dead for this season. And I co-host a podcast with my friend Abe called Out Now with Aaron and Abe, where we talk about new movies on a weekly basis. And we do a lot of fun bonus episodes, mainly commentary tracks, which we do one a month for. So,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. I've always wanted to do a commentary track. Time has not allowed it, but that is on the agenda someday for one of the podcasts I do, or just for fun. We'll see how it goes.
Well, you never know. Maybe we'll be able to get you on in one of our commentary tracks at some point.
Yeah, I always feel like I always feel like I'm just going to sit back and watch the movie and not really have enough to say. Or I'll just say some stupid dad joke and ruin the whole vibe. So
You'd be surprised how many good tangents you can go on in a comment, especially for certain movies where it really applies.
Right. I think it's kind of going against the grain because I'm always like, never talk during a movie, and then there's a movie playing and I'm talking during it. So I'm, it's one of those challenges I think I'm up for soon. So we'll see. We'll see.
When there's something you really admire, like we did a Memento commentary last year, and that's not a movie where you'd inherently think some random guys that have nothing to do with the making of Memento could talk for that much about it. But we ran out of time to talk about all the stuff we wanted to talk about with that one. It was a fun track to do, but it's like,
awesome.
Yeah, we wanted to cram everything we could in there for Memento of all things. It was a lot of fun.
Very cool. Well, today we are going to be talking about a couple of things. Now, like I said, you and I have been talking about getting together for the show since I started this, and this is a side podcast. So I've always it's been one of those things that always kind of is like the first thing to fall by the wayside when I have other things going on. But I'm glad this finally worked out. And you had brought up a movie called The Congress. And it's actually, the title I have here says Robin Wright at the Congress, but it's also known as The Congress. I believe a 2013 film. Yeah. And so we'll be getting into that. And then as we were kind of planning this, we both were talking about Mortal Engines, and we figured, what the hell? We'll talk a little bit about Mortal Engines today as well. So two very
box office flop and future cult classic Mortal Engines.
I think so. I think that's how it's going to go down. And I was trying to think, is there any through lines with this film? And I'm like, these films together, I'm like, I don't know, probably not. They're both there is the dystopian future. Yes. Yeah. Yes. Okay. That connects the sci-fi with both of these.
They're both pretty animated. I mean, a lot of not real stuff taking place in both movies.
Mm-hmm. I can concur with that. So the thing I like to do whenever I start off with a guest on the show is kind of talk a little bit about kind of what has drawn you into science fiction specifically, since this is a podcast kind of focusing on that. What's your kind of history with science fiction films, and what is it about them that kind of draws you to a good sci-fi flick?
I've never thought much about where my origins with sci-fi specifically come from. I guess just as at an early age, watching things like Star Wars, let alone, I don't know, Terminator 2 was a film that I was one of my childhood films, which I feel like is a weird thing to say, but it's I watched Terminator. That was one of the movies I grew up with, that and Burton's Batman. So and I guess that dates me right there as far as where I'm coming from. But as far as sci-fi goes, yeah, I've always been drawn to unique ideas such as that are kind of fantastical, that present something that's not reality but are certainly things I can comprehend in a way that just intrigues me. So like something like time travel, it's like, yeah, okay, how does this work? Where's this coming from? Or something like Star Wars, like, yeah, okay, I'm in space. What's going on in here? Where are these ideas? There's planets and aliens and all kinds of stuff. And I was also a big like NASA guy growing up, as far as like just space things in general, stuff like that. So and right now it's been a great time for it because we had both First Man and Apollo 11, the documentary that's out currently, which is fantastic. So but like, growing up, I had Apollo 13 eventually came along, but just like going, learning about the astronauts and things like that, that's always been a draw for me. And so having, films that specifically speak to the idea of interstellar travel or what have you has always been of interest. And again, if I'm growing up in the 90s, movies like Independence Day come along where it's, that's far out there, whatnot, is drawing from, since that, I've, obviously gone back in time to see plenty of other movies that movie drew from, like The Day the Earth Stood Still or Body Snatchers to a lesser extent or what have you. So it's, there's a lot there. I've always just been a fan of the genre and exploring more of it, especially because there's such a seemingly limitless number of ideas that you can have for this, because it's always about, whether it's the past or the future, it's always about coming up with something that's different and out there or involves innovation or invention or what have you.
Yeah. It's interesting because I have 3 kids and kind of seeing them grow up. And like for me, like science fiction has always been, it's almost like in my DNA, just a child of the 80s for me. And, I was born in 77. So that was like, I was born when Star Wars came out. So that was like always a piece of my life. And then like seeing my kids kind of growing up with all these like superhero movies, like everything they go to the movies there's a sense of sci-fi to everything that they go to. I mean, we just went to Alita Battle Angel and they didn't think twice, like, oh, let's go to a sci-fi film. They're like, we want to watch this human heads on robots battle each other, for a couple hours. And then of course, Captain Marvel coming out this weekend and, or this last weekend, I guess. My time's all goofed up because gearing up for some travel. But yeah, I mean, they're like almost everything that they watch has a hint of science fiction in it. So they don't really bat an eye, or they don't really even think of genre. So it's interesting to see them kind of growing up with this and see like how they'll kind of define genres as they get older. Because right now they don't care. They just want to see cool stuff on screen.
It's certainly quite the time to be alive as a youngster, because you have like the kind of latest and greatest technology, which is really realizing things that, were something of a novelty back in the day. Like, you'd rarely get something even like the movie like Stargate, a movie I'm not a big fan of, but that's something that's unique to the time of 1994 because there weren't movies on that scale at that point.
Oh, that movie did really well. Because there was like nothing
like it. Yeah, there's nothing out there. Star Wars and to the lesser extent the Batman movies, because those were $100 million movies at that point. Those were to that in that range, and I guess T2. Like there's not much like that out there. So like a movie like Stargate, where people they're traveling through space or whatnot. There's massive scale things going on. There's aliens. Like no one's seen something like that, so it can get by on just being new, as opposed to now where we're going to talk about like Mortal Engines for a bit. Like that's a movie where there's a lot of other things that are like it, and there's nothing here that's being added. I mean, I think there are. We'll get to it, but I mean, it doesn't stick out in the same way that other movies would back in the day. So, like kids growing up now, and I'm sure you can relate other genres, like the '80s. You have plenty of the Amblin stuff and what have you. But like now, you have movies that can bring comic book characters to life on a regular basis that you wouldn't see back then.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost enough to kind of take for granted at this point. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how these kids growing up in this time period will kind of, once they become filmmakers, what are they going to do? Are they going to do more of the same? Are they going to go just completely batshit, or are they going to scale back and we'll have a renaissance of like 100% practical small scale films? Like, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. So let's dive into the first film. Let's go ahead and discuss Christian Rivers' debut film. I mean, come on, man. Your first film and you get this. 2018's Mortal Engines.
From the filmmakers of The Lord of the Rings.
Strange to think this is what it looked like.
That's what happens when the Earth's crust gets shattered into 1,000 pieces.
After the war,
Cities were rebuilt on the seas, in the skies. But the deadliest ones were built on wheels.
What is that? That is London.
This weapon can wipe out the largest city in the blink of an eye.
Not if we shut it down.
You sure you want to do this?
I have to.
Oh man.
He made his rounds. I mean, he's been with Jackson since the. I mean, I understand what you're saying for sure. It is, it's a dude that got $100 million to make a movie, and he's never directed a movie before. But I mean, yeah, he's worked with Peter Jackson for
He's
decades,
no slouch.
essentially.
He's not just some new kid. I mean, this guy's been doing all the was it the visual design,
visual effects and like second unit work stuff on like he has an Oscar for King Kong, like I mean among other things. But I mean what you're pointing out right there is kind of the issue with the movie, as far as he's a new guy coming into this, and he's not an auteur like Jackson. He's not someone that has a kind of a directorial stamp in the same way,
right? Well, but even Jackson has had his misses. I mean, if you look at the Hobbit series, well, I do enjoy them. Those are bloated beyond belief, and those were kind of him, in a sense, biting off more than he could chew. I feel like, so with Mortal Engines, so he came in with Fran Walsh and Philippa Boyens.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. I try my best here to write this film, and it seems like they knew what they had. This is a 4-book series, and it seems like they tried to condense a lot. I'm not sure. I haven't read the books. My daughter is actually right now, but it seemed like they tried to make a self-contained film and try to stay away from bloat as much as possible, maybe.
I mean, I would. The film is not. There's not too many strands to be like, we definitely can't finish all of this right. Like, it does feel like a beginning, middle, and end kind of film with like some hints at where it could go if it would to get a sequel, which it probably won't. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like a completed movie. I would agree.
Well, unlike say like Golden Compass, which I really enjoyed the Golden Compass for the audacity of it, for the visuals, for the kind of it's a kind of a weird film and a weird trilogy, but they couldn't finish it, and that's unfortunate, because I feel like that had a lot going for it as a film that I would kind of seek out. But
I actually agree. That was one where I was like, I did want to see where that was going, and I did kind of like, as messy. That movie did feel messy, but I still like dug the vibe that it had. Like, I mean, it had polar bears fighting, and it won an Oscar for polar bears. This should be our next episode, by the way. We should just talk about $100 million franchise failures.
I'm down for it, man.
That's the new podcast.
I'm down for it, because I feel like that I always end up lugging these failures, despite everyone else kind of hating them or mocking them or shitting on them. But hold on, setting down my now empty bottle of scotch. Damn it. So let's set up the plot of this film a little bit for our listeners. So this is a post-apocalyptic world. London is a gigantic roaming city on wheels, and we're kind of introduced at the beginning of the film to a colony, and then London is approaching. And
the colony also on wheels. Everything's on wheels.
The colony is like a transformer. It like breaks apart into a bunch of different little smaller vehicles and scatters off. And we see this chase scene, essentially, with this gigantic city chasing a bunch of smaller city portions. I mean, just saying that alone, it's crazy.
It's like Mad Max and Howl's Moving Castle, like combined and made something ridiculous. Like, that's what we got here.
So as soon as that started, I was like, I'm on board, man. I'm settling back. Then, you have Hugo Weaving kind of overseeing everything. And then we're introduced to our kind of main character, Hester Shaw, played by Hera Hilmer. And things get moving plot-wise. And
It's Star Wars. We can wrap it up right there. It's Star Wars. That's the plot of this movie. There's a kid comes from like a random place. The Empire comes after them. They have a big weapon. They have everything. They meet a smuggler character. There's bonding. They go on an adventure. Like the whole thing is Star Wars. There's an aerial battle.
That is very true. Very true. Yeah, dude.
If you're gonna take a plot, it's not a bad plot to go from.
No, I mean it is your. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, have you read the books at all or looked into the books at all?
I after I watched the movie, I did. Yeah.
Okay. Because, like I said, my daughter's reading them, and I'm wondering. I mean, I'm wondering if this thing was just a beast to adapt to. Like, all right, here's this property, and there's 4 books, and it's this amazing world building in these books. And who's the author of those books? It'd be.
I had it. Philip Reeve.
Philip Reeve, yes. I mean, he's obviously built this world, and I don't know how. I mean, the books, obviously, a lot of these and this is like kind of a young adult novel, and a lot of these young adult novels, these YA books, they take from a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. They all kind of rip each other off, and they all kind of do their own thing, and it's this kind of big industry of young adult post-apocalyptic or science fiction type stories.
Yeah, there's a clear formula here, and you throw in some dystopia on top of it. You get a strong female lead, add a love story, evil villain. It's not breaking any new barriers as far as like what the story's trying to tell you. Right. That's for sure.
So I'm wondering if like that was kind of the main negative reaction to it was, I mean, when I see like a very formulaic movie, I just sit back, I open up another beer, grab some, Reese's Pieces, and I'm like, all right, cool. Let me just settle in for the eye candy, because I know that I'm here for the eye candy. I'm here for just kind of have a story, kind of bring me along and enjoy kind of the world building and the set pieces. Did you have that kind of reaction to this film? Is this a film you could do that with?
Yeah, I did for sure. And I could see why this movie failed. Like, there's no big, I mean, as much as I like Hugo Weaving, there's no like name star to attach to this thing. Like, it's just like, here's a random actress that you don't know. Mm-hmm. She's the lead of this story that you've probably haven't heard of unless you're, 13 and you read one of the many different YA books that are available to you at this point. Like, I get it. I get why there's not a built-in audience for this that's going to give it more than, what it made. And it didn't make much money. No. That said, it cost $100 million, which, yes, that's a lot, but it's also relatively inexpensive given the scale of this thing compared to other movies. Like, the movie looks fantastic from a world building standpoint, and that is the highlight. And I can see why Peter Jackson grew attached to this to begin with, because of that scene you just described, the whole city swallowing another city thing. It's like, I would also want to see what that looks like if I read that. And he's like, I have water. I can go make this. Like, yeah, sure. Let's see. Let's see what that looks like.
Let's go give what a call, and I'll go over there. And that's a horrible Peter Jackson impersonation, by the way. I can give them a call, and we'll go do it. I haven't workshopped it. I'll workshop it.
We'll get back to that. But yeah, that is certainly something I attached myself. I mean, going into this, that's what I was looking forward to. I like the idea of a movie that's emphasizing big. It's like, that's the whole idea of this movie is like, yeah, what if we did this, but just really big? And it's like, wow, it really, it delivers on that. Everything is huge in this movie. Like, the scale is very large. It doesn't have a screenplay that kind of matches the aspirations from a visual standpoint, but I could still sit back with, as you're saying, sit back and relax with the idea of this movie's production design is insane. Like, they're really trying to go for it here. And I can take in that kind of reckless abandon to just make a huge scale movie with all this wild ideas for production design. At the same time, the problems are quite clear. I didn't glom onto them in the way that a lot of people did as far as why they don't want to, recommend something like this, because the story's, it's lacking. The characters, not many memorable people in this movie.
Right.
The most memorable character is not human, and we'll talk about yes. Shrike in a second, because yes, but I get it. Like, and what I was saying before of Christian Rivers as the director here, like, the Hobbit movies are not my favorite Jackson movies, but they feel like Peter Jackson movies still. Mm-hmm. Like, they still feel like a director that's he's doing what he knows how to do, and it looks like one of his movies. Where this is, there is a kind of a blandness to some of the stuff that's going on. I do, a true, even though I like this movie, if you wanted to head onto that upper level, it'd be a movie that I could really like just point out things that are, kind of full of wonder, kind of take your breath away or give you something that's like, wow, I have not, beyond the opening scene, which I have not seen before, as far as cities swallowing other cities, and the entire character of Shrike. Most of it's pretty much stuff that I've seen in other ways before. It's still impressive, hey, we made this kind of standpoint. But as far as is this sticking with me in the same way that Star Wars sticks with me? No, not really.
Right. I think the main problem ends up being kind of the ragtag group of characters that kind of come in and out of this film, especially when you get to kind of these pirate type characters. You don't really have anyone. They're all just kind of just generic kind of stock characters. Like, you don't really get a feeling for relationships very much. There's no memorable scenes. No one, I don't know. Like, I don't like comparing like a film like this to like something like Lord of the Rings, because that's like the source material and everything is just upper echelon stuff. But there are scenes, and the way that Jackson adapts it is every main character has kind of a memorable character building scene or thread that really kind of brings you into the character themselves. And I didn't feel like this movie had that at all, except with Shrike and see, I'm even forgetting the lead character's name, Hester Shaw. So with that, unless other than those two, like, you get a lot with them and their relationship, so you can kind of get the struggle there and the relationship there. Everyone else is just kind of just reading through the script, just kind of going in.
Well, you have characters that are, I agree with you. Like, you have like the male lead, who if I didn't have Wikipedia in front of me, I wouldn't know his name whatsoever. But like
Robert Sheehan.
Yeah, he's trying to be like, a foil to Hester as well as like a love interest, and it's like, okay, like, he's doing his thing. And you have the Anna Fang character who's played by the Korean pop star Jae. Yeah, who is trying to be like a Han Solo type character. Like, you have these people that are designed to they're designed to be these like cool type people. Yeah, they don't have much to really grab onto, as far as we don't know much about them beyond their their general look. Like Hugo Weaving, because you can recognize Hugo Weaving. He's an actor you already know. Plus, his name is Thaddeus Valentine, which is a pretty cool name.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fun.
Well, these other characters, they kind of just show up, and they never have time to really breathe together. They're moving from one place to another. Here's the setup. We got to destroy this weapon. He's building a weapon. Got to go through all this, and they're never really given time to really gel together as a cohesive group. At least a handful of them. At least if you look at a movie, any kind of fantasy science fiction movie, you have a few characters that I'm comparing these are like amazing films, like comparing it to like Star Wars or something like that. But even those, like, even if you look at the script on those and everything and the dialogue, there's some goofy shit in there that today would get ripped to shreds for sure. But there's just something about the camaraderie of the characters, how they come together, that sticks and is memorable. And there's nothing like that here. So, but let's talk about Shrike, voiced, I guess, by Stephen Lang. I don't know.
Mocap.
I guess he did mocap, but it's one of those things where he's like a robot. He's not. There's not a lot of like performance really to capture in my. I don't know. But of course, I'm not a filmmaker, so I do not know. But I like Stephen Lang. I'm glad he's getting work. So let's describe the Shrike character here.
Yeah, we need to talk about Shrike because so he's like he's a robot that's made like he has there's human parts in it. He's like an undead soldier. They're known as stalkers. They're like robotic parts around like I guess like a heart and it's weird. Like it's supposed to be this cold machine, but it's built on emotion. Like it finds this one particularly finds its emotion with Hester. Like it becomes like his father, her father figure of sorts. And like he's on this hell-bent mission to find her, and I guess like just bring her back with it. Like
he wants to. Yeah, he found her when she was young and hurt, and kind of
helped raise her essentially.
Yeah, and he wants to basically take her organs and parts and make a version.
There we go.
Like an undead but alive version of her, so she can live forever, which I like.
Yeah, it's like a weird zombie robot. I haven't seen this since December, so I'm trying to remember exactly. But
well, of course she's gonna run from that. Like I'm like I don't know why you think this would be a good idea, Shrike. You know what I mean?
Well, he's a machine. He can only comprehend so much.
I know. I guess.
But the look of this thing is amazing to me. Like it's such a
very steampunk Western.
Yeah, it very much fits the kind of what a steampunk robot would look like, but at the same time, I'm still seeing what that looks like, and the animation work done to create it is very impressive, which should not be surprising. Like it's coming from Weta, they know what they're doing, but it's still like every time Shrike was around, I was just glued to the screen. I wanted to know more about whatever the hell this was supposed to be.
Yeah, I mean he's compelling as a character even, and that's the thing. Like our most compelling character isn't even.
Is
real.
A cold machine that learned how to love.
Yeah. No, I was pretty. I mean, I'm pretty like I'm up and down on the film. Like I'm glad that it exists, and I'm hoping it's one of those things that kind of gets a cult following later on. And because like a lot of the times movies like this will happen when people start kind of discovering it on home video and stuff. But it also makes me want. I mean, I would love more steampunk movies, and there isn't. Steampunk is like a popular thing. Like you can on Halloween, you can get a pre-made steampunk character outfit. There's the whole like when I lived in. I don't know where this came from, but when I remember living in the Midwest in Iowa, and we'd head up to Minneapolis, and we'd go to like a punk rock show, and there would be like the ska punks, there'd be the skinheads, and then there'd be like mods, and they all dressed like they were from the 30s. And so steampunk seems to be a combination of like the 1930s and 40s or 20s or whatever aesthetic of these mods that I remember seeing at these shows. I mean, like the singular little, what is it called? The one eyeball glasses, monocle.
Yeah. Yes.
The monocles and everything, and the bowler hats. But in like a post-apocalyptic setting, and they scrape together whatever was found. And it's like it's interesting that this kind of has that aesthetic. But is there any other films that have that like kind of steampunk aesthetic? Like I'm like craving more.
I mean, not many good examples. The Wild Wild West movie, which is terrible, that goes for steampunk. Sucker Punch, I guess, has some steampunk elements in it. That Atlantis: The Lost Empire.
Right.
I guess Golden Compass kind of has some steampunk stuff going on.
It's
the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Oh, you know what? The best example I can think of, it's the Paul W.S. Anderson's The Three Musketeers. It's a steampunk version of Three Musketeers.
Yes,
and I like it. I like that. I like that movie. It's a big like over the top campy 3D action movie for Three Musketeers.
I haven't. I remember it coming out. I never saw it. So I think what we're saying is there's a lack of really good. There's like a lack of really good kind of steampunk movies, and there needs to be more. It's always been kind of relegated to. It's ambitious as hell, but they never seem to really stick the landing on these films. And I'm hoping maybe Mortal Engines will lay the groundwork someday for a really, really amazing steampunk film.
I mean,
fingers crossed.
It flopped ginormously, but I mean,
it did. I mean, what I'm saying is once
for comparison,
people like.
I want to point this out. Mortal Engines in America made $16 million, and it cost $100 million. Peter Jackson's documentary about World War I made $18 million. That documentary made more than Mortal Engines, which is impressive for a documentary.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the kind of scale we're working with here.
It's sad. It's sad. I mean, these ambitious films. I mean, even like Alita: Battle Angel, that thing kind of struggled from the States. I mean, that thing was like ridiculous how much that thing cost. But
but there's also everyone predicted that too. That's it's still making money. It's made almost 400 million worldwide, which is it's not bad.
No, okay. It's doing better than Mortal Engines did.
Yeah,
So it's a shame. It's a shame when like really ambitious films kind of fall a little bit flat. But I think the main issue here, was the script and kind of the direction of the characters, or was nothing to glob onto. But if you can look past all that, and this is in a way this is perfect for kind of home video coming out so people can discover it. But in a way, there's another thing. I wish I would have seen this on a gigantic screen, because that opening especially, and I think the opening is the most compelling part of the film. Unfortunately, like once it kind of gets
it is a highlight.
It turns into Star Wars, and there's airships flying around and laser beams and everything. And but that beginning, that opening scene is just so epic, and there's the scale that they're working with. I mean, just in general, the scale that's being worked with here is pretty crazy, because a couple of the characters fall off, they get off the city and they're in like a singular tire track, and it's like stretches, like, I don't know, 50 feet wide or something like that. I don't know.
It's large, that's for sure.
It's gigantic. And so there's a lot
I will say my lovely girlfriend and I, we did get to see it in IMAX. So it was impressive to see kind of that scale on that, on that level. Like that made the experience more fun than the movie probably would have been if we saw it just in a regular theater, let alone at home.
Yeah. But, I got a pretty good setup at home, so I'm not really fine. So, but if you're watching this on some like 11-inch screen, no.
Yeah, your Apple Watch won't do Mortal.
No. Try to watch this on a big screen if you can. I want to start moving into our next film. But is there any final thoughts you have on Mortal Engines? I think I feel like we've covered some things. I don't want to spoil a whole bunch of stuff on this thing because no one saw it. But
if they announce the Shrike miniseries, I'll be here for that. I'll watch the Netflix animated Shrike series.
Yeah,
Shrike Zone.
I mean,
it'll be called Shrike Zone. It'll be a talk show. Shrike will host it. He'll be sitting at a desk with like some note cards in his suit, and he'll be very emotionlessly interviewing actors about things. The Shrike Zone.
Would you like me to take your skin? I can take your skin and your heart. Is that okay with you? It'll be him just trying to basically talk them into turning them into some sort of skin robot suit.
Yeah, it'll be a lot like Space Ghost, Coast to Coast. It'll be like that. It's just instead with a cold, emotionless robot.
I am all for it. Yeah, Shrike. I mean, that's a storyline. I feel like he almost has enough going for him. It can actually be its own film, or even a TV series. I mean, it definitely, I think, would lend itself to that. I mean, his life is a very compelling life. That's not really explored too much. So there's so much mystery with him that he's like the only one left. And there's just like this rich history that we don't really see. So I don't know.
We have to enter the Shrike Zone, I'm telling you.
I think so. All right. So if any LA screenwriters or producers are out there, just contact Aaron and make sure he gets a producer credit for that. Yeah. Or a consultant or something. Some
Shrike Zone intellectual property.
Awesome. Well, let's move into the next film we are going to talk about. This is a crazy film. I wasn't expecting what I got, and I loved what I got. But this is a film directed by, I'm going to butcher the name, Ari Folman. Yes?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you got it.
Am I good?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a film called The Congress.
You had it all, Robin. A movie queen at 24. And you slammed all the open doors, crushed all the dreams. But then Aaron's condition started going downhill.
Eventually, he will be completely blind.
This proposal won't be on the table again. Robin will write for Jeff Green.
You were the future, Robin. You were Princess Bride. And now I'm in this situation.
What situation are you in, Jeff?
The situation of offering you the last contract that you'll ever have.
scan you. All of you, your body, your face, your emotions, your laughter, your tears. And we want to own this thing called Robin Wright.
I have to take care of my son.
Robin, things are changing quickly. We're entering a new age.
Once we've scanned you, there's no going back.
Welcome to the Futurist Congress.
So you're here too, huh?
You and I are the only ones who survived.
Who are all the rest?
Characters. They invented.
Are you Robin Wright?
Yes, at least I used to be. There is no way I can imagine Aaron in this world.
I crossed over 6 months ago.
To find Aaron, we have to go on a very long journey.
What's on the other side?
Truth.
So this stars Robin Wright, and Robin Wright, as everyone who is awesome knows, is Princess Buttercup. That's pretty much all I know her as, is Princess Buttercup. And she's in Wonder Woman. She's a badass character in Wonder Woman as well.
She's got House of Cards in recent years.
That too, you know. I mean, she's a pretty good actress, I guess. You know.
Well, she's a good actress, and she's done a lot of character type stuff. She's a good character actress from Princess Bride onward. Mm-hmm. But like in recent years, like when she got with David Fincher, essentially, because she was in Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, mm-hmm. and what's it? Regardless, like she just kind of started popping up in more things, and like House of Cards happened at the same time, and she's just been, which David Fincher also, yeah, that's the other thing I'm thinking of, yeah, which he did like the pilots on, and she kind of became like more revered, I guess. Uh-huh. Like she's just like in more stuff these days than she was, or certainly like more notable. So.
Yeah, this is a pretty compelling kind of hybrid film. It almost feels like two films in one, and I want to kind of talk about the cast on this. You have Robin Wright, as I mentioned. Harvey Keitel's in this. John Hamm is in this. Cody Smith-McPhee, Danny Houston, Paul Giamatti. I mean, it's just like, how did they all get involved in this film that I never even heard of until you told me about it? I mean, where was I? How did I miss this?
I mean, you know, it wasn't a big mainstream film. I mean,
but it seems something right up my alley. Like, I'm like, how did I not hear about this?
Yeah, it's wild. Like, I heard about this one because I was a fan of Ari Folman's previous film, Waltz with Bashir, which is it's a fully animated feature that it's really interesting. It's really neat. It was up for an Oscar the year it came out, and it takes these memories of a soldier trying to kind of deal with a past during a war in Israel. And it's really neat stuff. Like, it's a neat film to check out. I'd certainly recommend it. Yeah, and so I was like, okay, what's his follow-up film? And I was like, what? It's a sci-fi story like that's doing everything that it does? Yeah, I was all aboard, like wanting to see what this is going to be.
Now, this is like I said, the plot for this is pretty crazy. And like I said, it's one of those films that I'm like, I need to carve out some time to watch this again, because there is so much going on. There's so much even that seems to be even more relevant today than it was in 2013. I'm going to start the plot synopsis off, and then I'm going to hand it over to you to kind of finish, because I'm always pretty awful at doing plot synopsises, and this one's so, in a way, complicated that I want to make sure we don't miss anything. So, it basically, the start of this film is like Robin Wright plays herself, and she's being asked to basically sign her life away to become a kind of digital actress to be used in whatever the studio would want to use her for. And that way she can, I guess, retire, and they can just use her likeness for anything, which, like I said, like now in 2019, this seems like something that would actually happen. Like, I can see this actually being a thing.
And we watched like Rogue One, for example. You get Peter Cushing in that movie. Peter Cushing's not alive. Like, he made a performance. Like, he's there.
So
yeah,
that
Carrie Fisher's going to be in episode 9. Like, you know?
I know. Allegedly, they're using unused footage, but
yeah,
you never know. I guarantee they're going to do some digital trickery that they're not talking about.
They have to. I mean,
So the first part of the film is basically a lot of it is kind of this discussion with about this whole kind of
between Wright and her manager, who played Harvey Keitel plays her,
yes.
her manager, and like whether or not to kind of go through with this and what that could mean for her.
Yeah, so it's and that is a very interesting collection of scenes and conversations, because he's saying like, hey, you're kind of like a washed up actress, like. Yeah, you've kind of appeared in some good things, but you've kind of fucked over your career because you've made bad choices. And, maybe this is a way for you to kind of make some money and retire and kind of move on.
Yeah, it takes a really harsh stance. Like, it's certainly, it's Robin Wright playing a version of herself, not
right.
She's not playing like her.
I was getting upset. I was like, whoa, Harvey.
It's like,
Harvey.
Yeah, this movie is. No. It's going harsh. It starts with like her being told like her career's over and she's crying, and it's like, this is really sad. Yeah. But yeah, you get like the idea that there's a lot of kind of satirical Hollywood elements
right
here. You have the studio's called Miramount. You have Danny Houston playing a Weinstein type.
Yes.
So there's some obvious choices they're making as far as what they're trying to show you.
And also, kind of a side note, her son has a hearing. He's either going deaf or he has some hearing loss. That is also part of kind of the plot in a sense. But so I want to turn this over to you. And how do they transition into this real world scenario into an animated film? Explain to our listeners how this somehow connects, because I don't know, when I first was reading about it, I was like, how are they going to do this?
Yeah, so the first half of this movie is devoted to, I forgot it's the half too. I thought it was like much sooner.
Yeah, it's half the film, man.
But yeah, it's the first half of this movie is devoted to like Robin Wright considering whether or not to do this thing, and obviously she does, because just look at the poster for this movie. Like that's what's going to happen. And so the second half picks up like 20 years later, after she's agreed to sign over her likeness to being, digitally used in film, which comes with stipulations, which I actually think is kind of neat. Like she has a contract that stipulates what kind of movies she can be like associate, in and what have you, which leads to a conversation about sci-fi, which is pretty clever, where it initially in the contract that she puts in like no sci-fi, because as Harvey Keitel says, it's a dumb genre, which is like, and like Danny Houston has a whole thing where it's like Lord of the Rings, no one can read that, but they'll see the movie. Like it's a whole like, spiel he gives.
I laughed.
Yeah,
I generally LOL'd at that part.
But she does relent, and they do allow sci-fi, and so 20 years later, her digital likeness has become like this huge star, including in a sci-fi series called Rebel Robot Robin. And so in that 20 years, it means her contract is like about to expire, and so she's going to a city that's populated by people who are all using animated avatars of themselves.
Yes.
And so like as she crosses the border, she takes some like liquid or what have you to kind of design her own avatar, and she's suddenly transported into this whole different world that is completely animated,
which is crazy. And it's a crazy little shortcut. They just use basically drugs. Like, because when I was thinking about it as the movie was going along, I was like, how are they going to do this? Is she going to go into a machine like the Matrix? Like, what's going to happen? And they just solve it with, just take a pill or whatever.
Yeah, it's like if Bob Hoskins drank something in Who Framed Roger Rabbit when going into town, and instead of being drunk, he turned into a cartoon version of himself.
Right.
That's what happened.
and they don't really explain it. Like, they don't really go, we're gonna explain how this works. It's just, as far as I can tell, it's a
big go along with it type of thing. As far as like, this works. That's you just took the thing and now you're animated. Like that's how it happens. And so that half of the movie is devoted to her trying to understand what to do next, because it's 20 years later, the technology's changed a bit, And she could either kind of re-up her contract to continue this, although there are new kind of wrinkles to what was happening before, or she could make another decision, which kind of leads it down the path it continues to go on to the throughout the second half of the movie.
Right. And there's like rebels involved.
Yeah, there are those that are against the way Hollywood's ideas are taking over. John there, yeah, he's an animator who wants to help Robin.
John Hamm.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was John Hamm at all until I read that. Oh, that's his voice. But
the first time I watched, I was like, "Who? That sounds so." And then I'm like, "Oh, that's John Hambone." I call him John Hambone. Like, there he is. That's me. So I was like, I'm trying to picture this right now.
So, I mean, this movie deals with so many, like, there's so many philosophical ideas thrown into this film that it deals with, and it deals with in a way where it doesn't, unlike a movie like Mortal Engines, where everything is kind of stripped to the bone and you're just kind of taking on this ride. This film, it wants you as the viewer to do some heavy lifting with everything, with kind of her struggle and these conundrums that she's finding herself in. And I feel like it's not heavy-handed, but there's enough there that I'm like, this does warrant some rewatches. And you've seen this a few times, correct?
Yeah, I saw it. So I saw it back when it first came out, because I was like, yeah, I want to see the new Ari Folman film. And then I watched it again pretty quickly because I was like, I want to realize that more. And then I own it now at this point, and so I watched. This is probably my fourth time total that I've watched the film in recent, when I watched it last week or whatever.
What have been some kind of takeaways have you as you've kind of rewatched this? Have you, because for me that's a sign of like a really good film, is when you can kind of take more and more away from it, on both like a plot level, a philosophical level, and everything. And there's very few films that do that. A lot of films for me are kind of one and done. There's very few that I can kind of they rewatch and get more out of. What has been your experiences as you've rewatched these? Have you found any new takeaways, any aha moments, and anything like that?
I mean, in terms of, like what I'm emotionally taking away from it, or what like I'm getting from it, from like what it's trying to, what the plot's ultimately trying to do. Like, I'm not taking too much for that I haven't already. It's nice to kind of relive the same kind of thoughts or what have you. Okay. But in terms of like watching how it's constructed and what have you, like I think it's a movie that, it demands attention.
Yeah.
Like, it's not a movie to watch in the background. It's a movie that you really want to kind of pay attention to, because there's so much going on. Especially in the animated half, for a good reason, because there's so much visually to kind of take in. And so this time watching, I took notes this time just because I knew I was doing this podcast. I was like, I want to make sure I'm kind of jotting some of these things I'm noticing down a little bit more.
But you're a better podcaster than I.
Well,
I always start taking notes and then I just give up.
No, I hear you. Like, I don't take notes. I don't, like, when I go to screenings run, I don't take notes. I take notes for very few things. And this is one where I was like, well, I'm doing a podcast, so it's nice to just have like a handy thing in front of me to look at as far as like what I specifically remember. But like the animation stuff, you have like there's a lot of neat design, like the population of people like within the animated world, they have this like old Disney cartoon look.
Yeah.
Which I think is very deliberate, like just the way they move and the way the faces are drawn and stuff. Like especially when she initially gets there, you really kind of see that. And I was kind of noticing that a lot more this time around. I jotted down several movies I was thinking of as I was watching it this time, just because I wanted to think like, what are coming to mind as I watch this? And I put down like Eternal Sunshine, Synecdoche, New York, Snowpiercer, The Truman Show, Brazil, and I wrote Solaris, which made a lot of sense to me. And then I realized, oh, this is based on a story by Stanislaw Lem, who wrote Solaris. So like, that makes perfect sense. Like this, like from what I've read, the book that the Congress is based on and the movie itself are not very much the same at all. Like, it's just some basic concepts. But in terms of what it's trying to do, as far as giving you this kind of dystopian future that has a lot of different things, like you keep progressing into the future in this movie more and more.
Yeah.
And it becomes more and more abstract at that point too. Like, you don't like, it's less like, the first half is live action and it's very clear what what the plot's supposed to be. It's like, will Robin sign this thing and do this thing? As it goes on, you're like, okay, now we're in an abstract animated world where things are getting trippy. She's having, nightmares and dreams and whatnot. Then it goes even further in the future. It's like, okay, now like consciousness is like a whole new thing and whatnot. So it's like, that's a lot like something like Solaris or, what have you. There's a lot of bizarre ideas going on. Yeah. And I guess, if there's any new takeaways, it's just like random animation stuff that I noticed as far as what's being kind of portrayed, how the drawings are being shown to kind of give you a sense of what's happening. And just, I don't know, things I can't necessarily put into words, but just, it's been a few years since I last watched this movie, so I've grown up a bit. So it's like just kind of like, okay, that registers a bit more as far as being more of an adult than I was, years back. So.
Right. Yeah. It's. I mean, I love that. I think that's Tom Cruise that keeps kind of showing up every now and then. Right.
Yeah. There's like a good joke where. Yeah, it's like Robin Wright and Tom Cruise are like the only two people that are kind of like still around that did this. And they don't identify him as Tom Cruise, they just have him dressed as Top Gun and he's constantly smiling.
Right. I was like, I think that's Tom Cruise. That's Tom Cruise. And it's almost like a cross between like Jack Nicholson. Yeah, it's like a cross between like Christian Slater, Jack Nicholson, and Tom Cruise. Like the eyebrows are way exaggerated, but after a while you're like, oh, that's Tom Cruise.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty great. But yeah, I would definitely, man, I would recommend this movie to anyone who hasn't seen it. And I'm feeling like, and I don't know, like in your circles, you feel like this is still kind of a lesser known film. Like we all heard about Waltz for Bashir.
Mm-hmm.
Waltz from Bashir.
Waltz with Bashir, yeah.
Waltz with Bashir.
Yeah, because it got more acclaim. I mean, it was something different for one thing. Like it's an Israeli film where this is like, okay, this is like his kind of. It's still not necessarily American, but I mean, it has American actors or what have you. It's in English. Yeah, it's like it got more mixed reviews, which I think is always kind of encouraging because that means people are having like,
well, it's a bonkers film. Like this is not a
divisive ideas going on of like
film.
Yeah, exactly. Like so, something that to me, something that gets 60 or 75 on the Rotten Tomatoes score means, okay, not everyone's like over the moon about this, which makes it interesting in my eyes. It's like, okay, so there's ideas here that not everyone's agreeing on. That's intriguing to me. That like not everyone's agreeing that it's some kind of masterpiece. That's not a bad thing either. If a movie's a masterpiece, it's a masterpiece or what have you. If Mad Max gets 99%, good. Like I'm not going to argue with this. But this movie, it has, ideas that are kind of out there. Not everyone's necessarily going to wrap their head around and be like, yeah, this is perfect. No, it's kind of, it's weird. It's a weird movie. I won't even say it's perfect. I do think it has its flaws as far as how it's trying to communicate everything to us, but it's still far more intriguing than a lot of other things that I see that are, trying to kind of build some kind of sci-fi world or what have you. Yeah, no, it definitely has, it has ideas and it definitely wants you to put in some work. And for me, those types of films, sometimes they take a few, especially the older I get. I mean, I got 3 kids. I can't give 100% devotion to a film when I watch it for the first time. So a movie like this is going to be like, I'm going to have to revisit this because there's so much to kind of take in. And, but I feel like overall films like that are more rewarding. They kind of last longer in like the consciousness of someone who really likes a film like this. And I feel like, when I was younger, say like, because in college, I feel like I watched more kind of art house films like this and really took a lot more away because I was like, my brain was just on overdrive at that time. I had no other responsibilities other than school and maybe some part-time job. Whereas now it's just like, I'm flooded with information on a daily basis. My day-to-day is so busy. And so when a movie like this happens, it's like, oh shit, I gotta work. I gotta work right now. I can't just kind of turn my brain off and watch this, And I know what you mean. Like a lot of people's favorite movies, I'd say, come from both when you're young and when you're in college. And you kind of move away from the ones that you're young and you kind of stick with the ones that you found in college. You rewatch some of those later on and maybe you have some new revelations about what you liked or what have you, just given how your own temperature changes or how cultural climates change as far as certain movies. But for the most part, you at least get a sense of the kinds of things that you really respond to more, even if you can't kind of register with it the same way when you're, as you said, so busy with other things. It's hard to kind of go on, stick with something as easily.
So my question with this film, when they're cartoons, are they actually interacting with the persons like or is it all just a consciousness thing? Like, are they really fucking? Is her and John Hamm like? I'm sorry, Dylan, the character Dylan. Are they really having sex, or is it just a brain thing? How does all that get connected? You know what I mean?
I mean,
this is the stuff
like
I
it's
think
not
about.
it's not like an Avatar, like the movie Avatar scenario,
Right.
where like it's not like she's in like a chair somewhere, just like plugged into the Matrix or what have you. Like it's like they actually are. There's a physical presence somewhere. It's just everything is like seen through a screen essentially. So they're all making a version of themselves or whatever they want. Especially
So they
in the
still are.
further, they're making versions of themselves.
Okay, so they still are interacting with the world. It's like, but there is like kind of this, and there's this animation kind of.
There's an animation filter over everything.
Yeah.
Which is
okay.
It gets especially cheeky in the kind of the latter third of the film when things are really going in new directions or what have you. But like, it's certainly trying to present the idea that yes, if there were no drugs or what have you there, everyone would be, interacting with each other physically and look however they really look or whatnot.
Because the laws of physics are kind of...
they're pretty wobbly. So but I mean, the movie is obviously, it's very heightened. So like, it's another element of you just kind of have to go with it.
I mean, and I did. I mean, it's just funny because the way my brain works is just like stupid stuff like that.
There is I don't know if I want to call it a benefit, but that's what comes when you get, an international director involved, as opposed to, the things that we look at as Americans where we watch movies and there's a space in reality that you can kind of familiarize yourself with. Something like anime, which this movie has a lot in common with, as far as the animation stuff goes. Like, there's a freedom to explore. There's a magical realism that comes into play or what have you that you can use to bend the rules a bit. You can move around differently than you could in a straightforward, action movie or drama or, a real world thriller. Essentially, you can kind of play with it. So, in this world where people are literally taking drugs to get them out of the physical realm and into an animation one, things are going to be a little bit weird. It's going to get weird in there.
And they do play with time because she is, in a sense, like frozen for a while. Because she's basically, does she have like a mental illness or something like that? She has to kind of wait until they can find a treatment for whatever she has.
An event takes place that
I'm trying to give too much away.
I know, I don't want it either. Yeah, there's something that takes place that causes her to get kind of stuck in the animated version that she's in, and so they have to they have to freeze her in time until they can figure out how to solve that problem. and at that point, once it gets to that part of the future, that's when things get even weirder as far as how to understand things.
Because
when consciousness becomes that's at that point, that's when consciousness becomes more of its own entity as opposed to the physical being. It seems.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, like I said, like there's so much going around with this film that it's, and that's why I love it. I love films like this. I wish I had time to really dive in and really, really, digest this film, which I know I will. I mean, this is a film that I know that as my kids grow older, my daughter's 13. She's shaping out to be a fan of film, and I know that she's going to be pursuing, film and everything. And this is one of those films that when she's high school or college, I'm going to be like, hey, check this film out. It's on the list of things to be like, look, you need to watch this film before you have anything else consuming your brain. Like this is definitely something worth taking in, and it's always refreshing to kind of to see a film like this, whether it hits all the marks or not. I mean, for me, I feel like I feel like the negatives to this film would be something like it's not
heady.
It's heady. You have to work for it, and but as far as like, I couldn't think of any logical errors or any script errors. Like this is a pretty, it's a dense script, but it's not overly dense. It is a simplistic story in a sense, but there's a lot of things kind of at play, I guess, through the characters and through the interactions and philosophically, but it's not too confusing. It's not, I mean, you can hit all the beats, but there's just I don't know, this film really, really stuck with me, and I wanted to thank you, man, for bringing this to my attention, because like I said, I'd never heard of it, and it's a film I think a lot more people should check out. It was released on Draft House Films.
Yeah. It has a solid Blu-ray, which I have. It has some good extras of like interviews and whatnot. So it's worth checking out for sure, as far as kind of getting some additional content if you kind of rent the Blu-ray or whatever.
Yeah, which I feel like nerds like us, like all of us, have always paid attention to the Draft House film releases. And
I got a few,
For some reason, this one flew under the radar. Maybe just because it wasn't just one of those crazy films like was it The Visitor?
Yeah.
Or or what was that other one that oh gosh.
I mean, as far as Draft House goes, I have the FP and
right,
and Miami Connection.
Connection, that's what I was thinking of. Miami Connection.
I also have The Invitation, which is wildly different, but still.
Right. Like, this isn't bonkers like Miami Connection or the FP. This is definitely, I would say this is a hard sci-fi film. And by hard sci-fi, I mean,
it's not a campy movie by any means. Yeah. The way those are. This is that's one of their kind of serious releases that they put out.
But there is subtle camp in there. Like, there is that sense of humor.
You're in an animated world, you're going to have some fun with that.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
But even with like the Mirror Mount and all that, like there is that
there's some satire in there.
Yeah,
that works.
Really appreciate the satire to the film.
I want to point out three things that I really like about this movie.
Yes.
One is Robin Wright, who's very good in it. Yes. I mean, I think it takes a lot and like she hasn't done sci-fi. Like, I think Princess Bride is like the closest he's gone to something fantastical. Like, so she jumped into she saw this script apparently and just jumped into it. But she has to play a variety, a range of different things in this movie, and I think she does a great job. I also think Harvey Keitel is terrific in the first half. He has this whole monologue where there's a point where Robin Wright has to kind of get herself scanned for this thing, and it's kind of hard for her to get all the emotions required for the machine that's doing this, and so Harvey Keitel gives like just a great monologue, and it's just really good stuff. Like, I think Harvey Keitel is I think he's a terrific actor. I think he's because he came around the same time as like De Niro and Pacino and Nicholson and whatnot. I kind of feel like he not necessarily got the short stick of it, but he's certainly he's an intense guy. He's one of those he's a method guy like De Niro is. But he certainly has a specific kind of attitude, which doesn't make him too rangy, which I guess is part of why he just doesn't. Although he's been in like these Wes Anderson movies the past couple of years. Regardless, I think he's a good actor, and I think he's very good in this movie. I think he has a great portion in that first half.
That scanning scene is one of the best kind of monologues I think I've seen in recent memory.
Yeah,
and
it's a great sustained sequence for sure.
Definitely.
And the last thing is the score by Max Richter. I think it's terrific. I think it adds a ton to this movie as far as helping you be on the same level as the kind of the tone and atmosphere that this movie's going for. I think it gives you a lot to work with. I think he also scored Waltz of Bashir, and he scored the Leftovers, that TV show. He's done a lot of things in recent years. He's kind of come along since the like mid 2000s, he started getting more popular, but I think he's a good composer, and I think he does a great score here.
Awesome. Yeah, this is definitely, it's on my list for when we get to the end of the year. Everyone's doing their lists. This is going to be on the top of my film discoveries lists for sure. If I finally sit down and do a list, I always
cool
drop the ball. But yeah, it's definitely one of my favorite discoveries so far in this this year's flowing along though. Good God Almighty. But yeah, it's definitely one of my top discoveries of the year. So cool. Well, we need to start wrapping up the show here, but I'm trying to think. I think I've said everything I need to say about the Congress. If you haven't seen it, watch it. Definitely, if you're a fan of harder sci-fi, there's a lot to chew on. But even whenever I say hard sci-fi, there's certain people that kind of get scared. They're like, "Oh, I don't know." But I even feel like even if you're on the middling, if you like a good drama or a good story, and good character films, I feel like there's a lot to chew on in this film, and you're going to get a lot out of it.
I named some films earlier, like Synecdoche or Brazil or The Truman Show. Like, I think if you're a fan of those films, I think this is, kind of right up your alley. Definitely. And I feel like there's a few people that, anyone that's listening to Xenopod, like, I feel like probably has at least some familiarity with the movies I named. So I'd like to
Yes.
Some good examples of what you can think of when getting into something like this.
Our listeners definitely, we talk about bullshit on the show. We've talked about the Explorers and things like that. But I mean,
I know. Yeah.
This may be, from my recollection, the hardest sci-fi we've talked about. But I do want to dive into more, I want to, especially this year, want to kind of dive into some hard sci-fi stuff and get all philosophical and shit. But yeah, this posed interesting questions. Where does okay, she scans her life away. Is that, and I had, for a while, I was like, well, is this like the scanned character? Are we watching the scanned, or are we watching the real person? Like, where, like, where is the real person? Is she just retired, or is her, or is there consciousness, with the scanned character? It kind of brings up all these questions, and like, what if you signed your whole likeness away to be used? I mean, how, like, what does that mean? Like, it never really dives into like, oh, here's, like, she's working at Trader Joe's now. Like, doesn't go there, but it leaves a lot of kind of these questions, at least for me. And maybe I smoked a little too much, something when I watched part of it, but
you're not wrong for I mean, I know we're wrapping up, but I mean, there are some good ideas that presented that, as you mentioned early on, are not out of the realm of possibility as far as where we are today. Yeah, I mean, the idea. I mean, even the movie itself is basically doing it by having an animated presentation with the actors voicing these characters. But the idea of taking actors, likeness, what have you, and presenting that as its own commodity again, while the other real person's still out there. I mean, you mentioned working at Trader Joe's, like, that's a real thing. There was that whole story about the guy that, is an actor, but somebody found him in Trader Joe's and seemed to like shame him for it. And then like, it's like, yeah, you know me for this thing and that thing exists out there, but I'm a real person over right here. Like, I got to do my thing. So.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. There's, and yeah, I really think that the things that this movie poses are going to be actual real things that actors are going to have to, they already are, and to deal with. I mean, the estate of Carrie Fisher was dealing with that. And even like it's mentioned, even with Rogue One. So this is definitely something that is a real thing that is going to be, I think, more and more out there to discuss. And but this film, I think, really handles it well. And like I said, it doesn't spell everything out, so it's just fun to kind of think of the possibilities. So, Aaron Neuwirth, thank you so much for joining me on the Xenopod.
Thank you for having me
to talk about these films, Mortal Engines and The Congress. I think we can say, look, if you want a fun popcorn time, check out Mortal Engines. It's an eye candy film. And enjoy some treats and watch it. But if you want something a little more of substance, definitely The Congress will be your jam. So we
coming soon, Strike Zone. Don't miss out on that as well.
Yes, Strike Zone. Like I said, as long as if you're a producer and everything, you're listening, contact Aaron. He'll have the contracts ready to go for consulting and for producing rights. I mean, executive producer's fine, I would imagine.
Yeah, EP. Yeah, I'm not greedy.
Aaron, is there anything before we take off here? Anything you're working on right now? Any? What are the again, podcast and the website so people can find you, and where can they find you online and all that good stuff?
Sure. Yeah, my everything that I write ends up on my personal blog, thecodeiszeek.com. That's everything that I kind of do ends up over there. But all my main stuff is my written movie reviews, which are at weliveentertainment.com. And of course, there's my podcast that I co-host, Out Now with Aaron and Abe. You can find that wherever you can find podcasts. And you can find me on Twitter at Aaron's PS4.
There we go. All right. Thank you all for listening. We'll talk to all of you next time. I have no idea what I'm covering, so you'll be surprised as soon as I am. Talk to you next time. Bye-bye.